Good morning.
Hey, good morning, folks. Glad to have you here. Let's give it a few minutes, a couple of minutes for more folks to join. So in the meantime, I'm going to post the meeting notes link on the chat. And
Good morning.
if you can, please go ahead and add yourself as an attendee. All right, so while I have you here on the call, we have a item on the agenda to pick a logo for the tag. Let me share my screen, and this should be quick. We need to pick a logo, and I know everybody here doesn't join the meetings all the time, but we need some votes. All right, let's go around the table here. So, Jens, which one did you like?
Seeing it the first time, I would always go with C.
We'll go with C. Okay, that's good. Okay, Wilhelm? Or Christian?
Sorry, just had to jump off mute. I would probably go for B.
Okay, we got B. One more here. Wilhelm?
No, sorry, that was me, Ricardo.
Oh, that was you. Okay, I thought it was Christian.
No,
Christian?
was me.
Christian?
I kind of like C.
Like
Yeah, I'll go with
C.
C.
All right.
Sorry, Ricardo, it's Will. I want to change mine to C as well because I just had a look at another logo with a cheetah on it. And it looks a lot like B. So I want to change mine to C as well. Put my vote down for C.
Okay, C. So
I was B previously, just change it to C.
great. So, Alina?
I vote for C.
For C, okay, great.
Mhm.
Thank you. All right, we got Cesar.
Hi guys. I like F.
Like F, okay. All right, so we got two here. All right, I'll give it maybe an extra day and see if more folks actually vote. If you know anybody who would like to have a say on this, feel free to reach out to them, and then we can count the votes at the end. All right, so that's out of the way. So the next item that we have is Direktiv serverless orchestration framework. So is it Jens or Wilhelm? Go ahead and take it away.
Okay, easy. It'll probably be me. I'll switch on my video so you can look at my ugly face as well. And share the screen. Just let me know if everybody can see that.
Yep.
What screen can you see? Do you see the? I think you see the wrong screen. Hang on.
You see a presentation. It says Direktiv.
All right, you don't see the two. Okay, all right, perfect. Yeah, thanks. The first thing is I want to just clarify what directive means. So if you go and read up on the word directive, the one that we really picked is we like the second one. So a construct in source code that indicates how it should be processed, but it's not necessarily part of the program to be run. And ultimately, if you look at what directive does and how it does it, that's what we want it to be. We want it to be the orchestrator to orchestrate how things run, but not necessarily part of the actual running and execution of the components. So like, if I had to break it down to what directive is an orchestration engine. So it's a set of primitive declarations. It's driven by events in the environment. And these events can be, well, we standardized internally on the cloud events, but we've obviously also Knative eventing. The next thing is we run the component serverlessly, and this is more of a, I would say, non-technical explanation to people who don't understand what directive is, but for this group, it runs on Kubernetes, part of Knative as well, or installed Knative as well. And the last thing is we use containers. Our whole execution strategy is to run containers, which means for the people that use this and for the customers that we have, we execute their containers. And the important thing to note is that we're not inside the plumbing, obviously, of Kubernetes or Knative or any of those. We actually use these platforms as, our plumbing, and we run on top of it. So the reason we chose to do this is because what we wanted to be able to do is have a platform that can run cloud agnostic, vendor agnostic, should be able to run anywhere, at any time. And obviously Kubernetes gives that for us, and that's why we chose to run it on here. We wanted to be able to go to the group, the communities, the customers, and say, you need to be able to run any code, any language, any service, and you need to be able to standardize this across your whole environment. So instead of using very specific automation platforms, orchestration platforms, and then developing extensions in Python using their SDKs, why not just build a platform that can run a container, and you can use any coding language and whatever you want to use. And then obviously, the reason we wanted to do that is because we wanted to make sure that the customers that use this have as little impact in their DevOps processes as possible. So we wanted to be able to reuse their services, their skills, the processes, everything else that they have in their environment. We wanted to be able to reuse today, because that means we're really in fast and it's used fast. So from this point forward, we're not going to talk anything about technical, the sales or any marketing. And I'm going to dive into the architecture of what directive is, how it works, what we've done. We've got 3 ways that we've deployed this. So the first way is like a single Docker installation or Docker container that you can run on your laptop, and I'll show you the one running on my laptop as well on localhost. We've got customers where we deploy VMs too. So we give them a VM that they can clone. It actually runs K3S and Knative already pre-installed with our Helm charts and everything else. But the preferred way is obviously into existing Kubernetes cluster with the Helm charts, and it's all available from our repo, the GitHub repo. how Directive looks internally. It's actually for everybody in call, this will be very familiar. We use Conga as our ingress controllers. We use Linkerd as our service mesh. It's really lightweight, and there's a lot of functionality, but we use it specific to our MTLS between Directives components. We actually really love the Conga and the Linkerd projects. Directive itself, in the next slide, I'll show you what the pods are that we create for the Directive and Directive functions. We use Knative for the functions. We've built into the solution Prometheus metrics to get metrics out of our platform and our pods. We've built in open telemetry for tracing. So at KubeCon, we showed the open telemetry integration into Grafana Labs, into Tempo, and then Fluent Bit as well for logging, and then the Postgres database to maintain the statefulness of the solution. Any questions? Okay, good. This is a breakdown of what the environment actually looks like internally. So you can see we've got the 4 or 5 pods that we have, which is Directive UI, API, the flow, the functions, and Prometheus server. So the UI and API and flow is pretty self-explanatory. Functions is our functions pod, which runs it. And the Prometheus server is the matrix exports. The Knative serving namespace that we use obviously runs Kong and everything else that we need to scale the containers into the pod. And from our perspective, or from our users' perspective, though, they very rarely see this. They don't even know that this is all the components running at the bottom, because we try and hide as much as what we can on for the users and the administrators, so they don't need to dive into Kubernetes or any of the components in here. It's just a container orchestration engine for them. So how Directive works is very, very, very simple. So there's a workflow definition language, and I'll take you through the specification in the next slide when we get to how it works, and I'll show you how it looks. It's a YAML definition. We also have in development a directive language, which is something similar to some level of coding language that you can, instead of writing it in YAML, just do like a scripting type directive language. There's the workflow builder as well, which is a graphical interface. Please don't use it. No self-respecting engineer should use graphics. But then we do JSON in or binary data in. And Directive orchestrates the data that's being passed between the containers in, out, in, out, in, out. As you can see, the thing for us is the integration of any customer container or user container into our environment is just what we ask them to do is start a listener on port 8080. We will give them a JSON object. If you can unmarshal the JSON object in your container and then do with it whatever you want to do with it, we don't really care. But when you want to talk back to Directive, marshal the JSON, your data into a JSON object again, and pass it back to us on port 8080, and Directive will honor the flow that you've defined. The retries, the logging, the error, any of those things as part of the workflow. And what we give at the end is JSON or binary data out. In Directive as well, you can configure the container registry. So any container image registry compliant system or service, we can pull the containers from and use it in the workflows. So the Directive specification, this is the actual YAML specification, the language specification. It might look very complex, but it's actually super, super simple. We've got start definitions. Because it's an event-driven system, we allow you to start workflows based on events, stop workflows based on events. We'll pause a workflow, branch off to other workflows based on events. And the start definition is just a reference point for what to start a workflow on based on the event coming in. The function definition is probably the most important part, apart from the actual state definition. The function definition defines what containers to run, or alternatively, if you configure a service within Directive, a service is just a pre-existing container that we spin up and make available. Then the function definition is the one that you use to define either a global function, a namespace specific function, or a isolated function. And then you could also call subflows from the function definition. So that's how you cross call on multiple flows. And then the second most important part at the bottom is a states definition. So within a directive workflow, you have multiple states, and the states is just an action, an event, a delay, event, or any of the green boxes, and each of them follow through on a transition, and the transition moves you into the next state. And as we get through this, I'll show it in the example. But it's documented in our specification in docs.directive.io, and there's also a lot of examples on how to use it. And yeah, it's pretty simple. Any questions?
What question that I have? So is this just the workflow, serverless workflow specification that is the other part of the other initiative of CNCF, or?
Yeah, no, the serverless workflow specification is a much more it's a much more complex specification. It is used for a lot more than just what we do. It's used for business process specifications as well. We couldn't implement that successfully in what we did. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just too complex for what we're trying to achieve. I expect the serverless workflow specification more to be used in really, really complex business process management. This for us was simple, understandable, and easy to use. So yeah, not the same thing.
Got it. I got it. And is the specification very different from something like you find in the step functions in AWS, or the workflow and the functions in Google Cloud, or?
Yeah, it is similar, but again, it's much simpler. So as one of the proof of concepts that we did, well, one of the proof of concepts that we did was we received a step functions flow from one of the users, and we converted it from step functions into the directive flow. And Jens is online. He can absolutely tell you if I'm wrong or right, but I think we went from 488 lines of YAML down to about 243. And that's just because what we've tried to do is not over complicate with multiple types of primitives. The primitives in front of you are really like the core of the primitives. I'm sure it'll, as we get more use cases, there'll be reasons to grow this, but we haven't found it yet. So it seems to be working.
Got it. Yeah, I would imagine like in the future, like, some folks want to, because I mean, there's a lot of talk about vendor lock-in, right? With some of the cloud providers. So, a path for some users to like migrate from some existing like step functions or something to something like this, right? So
yeah.
Yeah.
Unofficially, there is a step functions migration that we've written, but we haven't made it available purely because it's just not. I don't think it's appropriate to do that type of stuff. But what we were asked a lot in KubeCon is like, how does this compare to step functions? And we're trying to explain to people that you have to take step functions and Lambda and Event Bridge and mash them all together, and then you get directive. And it's just a fact. And the same for Google. You've got to take Google Functions, Google Workflows, and Google Event Arc. So I can't remember what it is. Those you've got to take all three products, mash them together, and then it becomes portable across, and then make it portable across all platforms. So yeah, that's where we are.
Got it. Thanks.
So there's a couple of ways to run workflows. Obviously, you can schedule it schedule it via cron-tab configurations internally in the workflow. So the scheduling is kept inside the workflow configuration. You can make API direct calls to execute workflows. You can have user interaction on the front end. I don't think anybody uses that, but then obviously the big thing for us is cloud event or event event initiation. Apologies. The one thing that's very important inside of Direktiv is everything is converted into a cloud event. So we are fanatical about cloud events. We love it. We love the concept, and you'll see that all the internally generated events are all cloud events. All the convert to events are cloud events, and even our Knative integration is going to convert it into an internal cloud event. So we're fanatical about that. So we've built a whole bunch of plugins, containers that you can use as part of Direktiv, and it's like the ones that you expect. So Google, a whole bunch of Google ones, a whole bunch of AWS ones. But we also in the repo have an examples folder where we've taken like the top 9 or 10 development languages, and we've given the users examples in there. And the example literally is just, I can show you later, is just start listener on port 8080, convert JSON object to internal variable, and then it's hello world, and write back as a JSON object on port 8080. But it gives people a template and a framework to work from if they don't know anything about development or anything about how to build a Docker file. It's all in the examples folder, and it makes it useful because you can spin up something very, very quickly to use in Direktiv. And that's exactly what I was talking about. There's the main examples, and there's a whole bunch of languages in there. And then what we've done, so everything is on GitHub. We joined CNCF. I don't even remember when we joined CNCF, but we attended KubeCon last week. So the engine, the UI, the API is all open source. The plugins are all available. We've integrated the metrics, the logging, and the tracing, everything into the same version. We're develop first open source, then we'll migrate what we've done into the enterprise customer. So everything that you see, all the commits, everything that happens is on our open source GitHub repo first. Yeah, the whole idea is that we don't restrict the functionality of the engine or the UI or the APIs or anything. Whatever you're able to use, everybody else, whatever our customers are able to use, everybody else should be able to use as well. And that's it. I'm not going to go through all of the examples. Got a whole bunch of examples. Any questions? Do you want to just have a look at it quick?
Yeah, that would be great.
All right, so this is one running on my local machine, and it's just a Docker run, and it runs the instance. So a couple of things. The dashboards obviously is pretty graphs to show you the success rate invoked, all that kind of stuff. Explorer. So firstly, there's the concept of namespaces, security domains, or configuration domains within Direktiv. So every namespace can have secrets, registries, namespace variables.
Well,
so yep.
Is it possible you can make it a little bit larger than the screen?
Yeah,
sure. The fonts, maybe. Yeah.
How's that?
A little bit more. Yeah.
How's that?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you.
So yeah, the concept of namespaces, obviously, this is not similar to Kubernetes namespace, but it's the same principle as Kubernetes namespace. In future, we hope to change this to actual Kubernetes namespaces in some way, shape, or form. But the idea is the same, restricted to what you can have in the namespace, the secrets, the registries, the variables. Let's go to Explorer. So I'm going to look at a very, very, very simple workflow. So if you want to create a new workflow, obviously you can say a simple workflow, and then you can use a template. Sorry, I'll just remove this Zoom. And then you can say, create me from a template, action template. From this point forward, I mean, you can create a workflow, you can do the workflow builder. I'm just going to create the workflow, and we'll show you what it looks like. And then let's go to one that actually does something. So this is, apologies for the people who are not into Bitcoin. This is just a running joke inside the company, but this is what this is going to do. This workflow is going to do is we're going to execute a GET request. So this GET request You can define two types of functions. You can, well, actually 3 types. You can define a Knative namespace function or a reusable function. A reusable function, if we do reusable get request, then this would change to image vortal/request, and I'm going to use v12. I think that exists. This references hub.docker.com because we have Docker as the default repository. And there you go. There's our request container with all the inputs and outputs. And if you look at the definition for this, is we're going to create a type reusable. The ID is get request, and the image is run this image. And we use this function within this state called action. And this action, the state definition is run this function called get request. So this references this ID get request. So we're telling it, run the volatile request container. This is the input that the container is expecting, or some parts of it expecting. And in this case, just to show the features of retries and error handling and everything else. Retry if you see an error code or error condition coming back from the container. So what's going to happen is this is actually going to give us JSON data back. And what we would like to do is we'd like to use this JSON data, but only a specific value in future. So what we've done is in Direktiv, we use JQ-parse, the JQ parser, and we can transform the data using JQ commands. We actually have a JQ playground built into this as well. So if you don't know JQ, you can go and play with it and learn it. So we do a get request, receive the data back, and we are going to do a JQ transform on this. And then we're going to pass it on to the next state. The transition state is get the value. What we do in this state is we actually try and get the previous value from the previous run of this workflow that's stored in a variable called L-value. So now onto variables. Variables are defined on a workflow level, so instance level, namespace level, or a workflow or a global level. So instance variable only exists for the time that the workflow is executed. A namespace variable or workflow variable exists on the workflow level, and then a global variable exists available to all in the namespace. So if I go and add a variable in here, it'll be available to all my workflows. And the workflow get Bitcoin has very specific variable called L-value, which is available to subsequent instances. And then you get the instance variable as well, which is only available for that one run. So in this case, what I've done is I'm getting the value of Bitcoin from the previous run. And then I'm making the decision based on a JQ evaluation, which is very simple. It's just a switch. And there's 3 transitions in here. The value is the same, the value dropped, or the value went up. And then you have no ops. And the no ops, all we're going to do is we're going to set or write what happened. So it's up, down with the values, but all of them transition to the setter state. And the setter state writes back that value that we just received back into the variable for the next run. So if you look at the diagram, it is super simple. It is get the value, get the variable, compare it, decide what to do, and set it back. Right. So that's the first thing. Now, I didn't save it. We previously had a reusable namespace. We changed it to reusable namespace. So now it's gone back to what we configured it originally, a Knative namespace. The difference between Knative namespace and reusable namespace functions is right here. So in this case, what we have is you can configure Knative namespace services that are always available. So in this case, if I wanted to create a Knative namespace called request CNCF portal, /request v10, I want to scale this to 1. So I always want to have 1 instance available. So there's less spin up time downloading container, doing everything else. If I hit create service, then what we're actually doing is building the service, and it's readily available for any of the workflows to be used. And you can see what Direktiv does in the backend: download it, verifies that it's running, builds the service. And then what we've done is we've also built in revisioning and traffic splitting. So if I want to do version 12 of this, so run version 12 of this container as opposed to, so run the container with the tag v12, but I want half of the traffic to go one way and half of the traffic to go the other way, I can create a revision for this. And this is just Knative traffic splitting. Anybody in here would know what this is. So it allows us though to do some traffic management on the container levels, or the service levels actually. So while that's doing its thing, I'm going to use this get request container. You can see it just uses the volatile request latest. We can go back to dashboard, get Bitcoin. You can see Knative namespace service type, and the service is get request. So sorry. And like I said, for anybody who wants to use the workflow builder, here's the workflow builder. You can go and add delays and click and link. I'm not going to do all of that. And then update the workflow. So that's in there. So Knative namespace, let's execute. So what I do want to show is this is now running. That's the URL. This is the JQ transform we did. So we stripped out all the original information that returned. We're only returning the value from Bitcoin, so it's dropped a bit since the last time we ran this. And write it and set it back into the value. So if we go, the value is 63649, view workflow, variable show value 623354. That was the previous one, 62349. Okay, so and that is the way Direktiv runs. That's the way Direktiv does its thing. And then a couple of things to note: we've built in secret configurations in here. Obviously, the container registries are built in here. This is the local instance running. Then, if you have additional questions, everything else, I mean, what we can do is I can show you quickly how the Grafana integration looks, the OpenTelemetry integration looks.
I have a question. So,
Yep.
how do you deal with like parallel workflows, and some of those parallel workflows actually have dependency or like there's a step maybe in the future that has dependency on those parallel workflows. Do you have that case, or do you have to?
So
does the workflow specification allows you to do that or not?
So well, I can answer. I don't know if I got the question right, but we have two ways of handling it. One is you can create subflows, and the other option is using events internally. So you can publish an event and then straight away wait for an event. So the other workflow can basically publish an event when it's done. So basically sync them back up again. That's how I would do it, if I understood the question right.
Yeah, that's one way I think of it. The other way is like within the same workflow, maybe you have, I don't know, you may be running like 2 JQ queries, and one of them actually, and you expect the next step to have both of them ready.
Oh yeah.
We have that state.
Okay, yeah.
You have a parallel state where you can run parallel things, and then you can define if you're happy with the first one to come back, or they have to come back. You can do that. Look at the specification. I think it's a parallel one.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So you can run, and actions for us are not only containers, they are subflows as well. So in the parallel, you can say start this subflow, run this container, and then wait for both of them to come back, and then you can keep on going.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was asking. Yeah.
And then lots of people asked us what the OpenTelemetry integration looks like. This is, sorry, oops. This is the OpenTelemetry integration, and obviously, again, like big fans of OpenTelemetry because everything that we push in here is OpenTelemetry data. We can trace from beginning to start, beginning to end. The OpenTelemetry data gets logged. We originally tested all this on Jaeger, looked great, and nowadays we show people on Grafana as well. So it's just a configurable item in the Helm chart install in any case where you want to send this data to. I think that's it. If anybody has any more questions?
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm the lead engineer on Argo workflows. I'm quite new to these meetings, so I don't know the right way to ask this. Did you say your underlying technologies were existing open source projects?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me show. There you go.
And so if a user wants to write a task within this, do you provide them like an SDK to do that, or do you just say use this SDK for it?
You're talking about the containers getting executed?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is basically, it's we don't really need an SDK for it because it's, or we decided not to because it's quite simple. The kind of contract is you open like a web server on port 8080. We pass you the whatever data you saw in input, which you can, hard code, JQ and whatnot. We pass this down to your container. You do your thing, and then you respond back with JSON to the workflow engine. The only kind of SDK kind of thing is probably logging, because you can write, of course, logs to send it out, and then FluentBit would pick it up or whatever tool you're using, right, and stores it somewhere. But to attach it to that instance, you have to post to the logs you want to basically attach to that instance. You have to post it to localhost.
Wow.
GitHub's down, by the way, if you're trying to use GitHub.
That's insane. I was about to say, is anybody seeing this?
It seems to be down more often this year than last year, and more last year than the year before.
Yeah, so in this actually, if you want to go have a look, once GitHub is up and running, in this examples directory, we've got all the examples for all the code levels that we expect people to use and how to use the logging and everything else. So yeah.
What are your like typical use cases and kind of typical customers?
So it's really interesting. We've had weird use cases come our way. We've had everything from I'll share my screen. Am I still sharing my screen? Yeah, I still share the screen.
Yep, you are.
We've been working because the company obviously started in Australia, so we were working with a school in Australia where we were classifying images before they went to SharePoint. So that's the example we had there, but they had the craziest workflow because it was, they needed Google Vision API for the classification, but they had AWS Lambda function to have watermarks on top of it. And then everything was hosted in SharePoint. So that was a fun one to do. The other one was email encryption workflow where, so they have a lot of systems that generate emails and go to third-party vendors, but to prevent data leakage or data leakage prevention, all these systems contain host names, host names, IP addresses, those kind of things. And these systems, I mean, I'm going to pick on a vendor, not be sure, like let's say it's a VMware vCenter environment. They send out the emails, it's not encrypted. It's, that capability doesn't exist. So we intercept the emails with the email listener on Kubernetes. And we deconstruct into JSON objects. We run the password encryption and we zip it up, encrypt it, and then we construct the email back again and then send it off. This one was a Dell specific one, automated storage provisioning, and that one is I don't want to put it up there, but it was to run Terraform and Ansible environments. So we cloned the Ansible playbook, we cloned the Terraform script in GitHub. Actually, I have the workflow right here, in here somewhere. There you go. So this is the master script that calls a Terraform build and a Ansible hardening. And how this works is, I mean, if you understand Argo, you'll understand what we do. We use the Vortal Git to clone it. We use Vortal Terraform, which is just runs up a Terraform environment, gives it the script. It executes based on the Git Terraform script that was cloned. And then we push to Discord, and then the last one is the Ansible one, and the Ansible is basically the same thing, Git and Ansible. So clone a Git, we actually clone the CIS Ubuntu hardening guides, and then we run that on an Ansible container.
Do you provide like an enterprise version of this as well as an OSS version?
Yeah. Absolutely. There's only two differences though, and it's not big differences. The enterprise version is we integrate authentication authorization and policy controls. So obviously very, very strict policy controls actually right there. So this is OPA, if you know what Open Policy Agent is.
Yep.
That's it. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to talk about the enterprise version on TAG-Runtime. So,
Have you
any
seen
other questions?
Yeah, have you seen any use cases for like edge type of applications, or where some folks want to run like some functions at the edge, or?
Not yet, purely because like if you go back, the project was only started in, I think, November last year, and we had a soft launch to some beta testers for us in March, and like a beta release actually I think the repo only went live in May. So we're very much like growing and expanding, and we haven't engaged the community all that much, to be honest. We need to. Just there's too many things happening at one go at the moment. But yeah, we probably look at edge cases as well.
What else do you have in your roadmap?
Roadmap, yeah. So I think Jens is online. He can tell you. So the UI, I can tell you about UI changes. So the UI is going to be changing significantly. We've got feature sets we want to build in UX. We're engaging UX designers. We want to make this a bit more user friendly, because as you can see, this is us doing what we think is a great idea. Not everybody agrees with that. We've got Knative eventing updates coming out, I think, next week. What else, Jens?
I think that's pretty much.
Oh, and and the ML as well, which is on the roadmap.
Which I did want to mention, because you never know because this is in an early research and development phase.
Yeah.
Where we can, I mean, server workload prediction is hard, but with Knative, or with like all serverless solutions, as we know, you can say, of course, with Knative, give me like one instance all the time, but then you have to ask yourself, what's the point, right? So if there's no instance running, Kubernetes still needs like, I don't know, 10 seconds, sometimes 20 to spin up the container if the image is already downloaded. And if not, it takes even longer to download the image and then spin up the pod. And to avoid that, but again, this is early R&D phase, is can we predict over time, because we have the data from Prometheus, can we predict over time when you actually need a container to run this? Again, but this is like an early idea.
Yep. There's a roadmap. I think there's a roadmap deck that page that we share internally. We should probably make that available to everybody else as well.
Awesome. Do you plan to join the CNCF as a project, or you haven't talked about it yet?
I don't think we've ever actually discussed. Do you mean a sandbox project?
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever discussed this purely because there's so much investment and community investment in Argo workflows, and I mean we have a person from Argo workflows on the line. I don't know. Yeah, so we've never actually discussed it. We could potentially be. I don't know. I don't have an answer on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I was just bringing it up,
Yeah.
but it's something to keep in mind. One last question is, you have this other project called Vortail. Is there any
Yes.
is there any relationship between this project and Vortail?
Loosely, yes. Very loosely, yes. This was actually born from Vortail because we struggled initially to build a platform that could do everything we wanted to do with Vortail, automate management control, everything else. And then we worked out this is actually, well, actually, we didn't work this out. We demoed this to a customer of Vortail, and they said, this is a really, really cool piece of software. And we said, yeah, whatever, like, look at Vortail, this is cool. And then we demoed to another customer of Vortail, and they said, this is actually pretty impressive. This is better than Vortail. And we were very upset with that, obviously. But that's how it was born, because a couple of customers keep telling us this is a cool idea. You should do something with this. Do something more than just showing us how it builds Vortail machines. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks. All right.
All right.
Any other last minute questions? Thank you. It was a great overview and presentation of the project.
It's a pleasure. Anything else, just give us a shot. It's all good.
Sounds great. Looks like no more questions. Well, thank you, everyone, and you'll have 12 minutes back, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.